I'm Rich Andreski, Bureau Chief for Public Transportation at the Connecticut Department of Transportation. And I'd like to welcome you to Along the Lines, a podcast series where we'll explore current issues and ideas on Connecticut's public transportation system. Good morning. This is Rich Andreski at the Connecticut DOT facility here in New Haven, Connecticut. And this morning, I'm joined by two guests, two riders of our bus and train system, Addae from the city of New Haven and Nefari Hassan from West Hartford. Welcome. We're going to spend a little time this morning talking about the role that public transportation plays in the lives of our citizens. And we've been talking a lot about the importance of public transportation, but it's really... when I'm talking about it, it's really preaching to the choir. And really today, I'm interested in hearing from our users, our customers that depend on these services and use them every day. So maybe we could start out just with some introductions. Kai, would you like to start us out? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you use public transportation.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I've lived in New Haven for the last 4 years. I've never owned a car since I've been here, so I've relied really heavily on the transit system, the bus and the train. For a while, I was taking the bus out to Orange every other week to do my grocery shopping. So being able to do that all by bus was amazing. And then I moved from downtown to a little further away, different neighborhood, and then I would rely on the bus when it was too rainy or too snowy to get to work by bike, because I normally bike. And then I also use the train, just to get to the city whenever I need to catch a flight, go home, and for like bike camping trips, which is something I'm really excited about. But taking the train to, jumpstart my rides and get out into like the more woodsy areas of Connecticut.
Kai, that is so cool. We think of buses and trains are for commuting. But here you're using it just about every possible purpose under the sun, including biking and camping, which I think is just fantastic. Nefari, why don't you share a little bit about your story?
I don't really own a car either. I've most often taken the bus, but also the train if I have to go to New Haven or to Springfield to meet up with family. And I like taking the bus because it helps me get familiar with my surroundings. And also because not having a car just makes things just a little bit more annoying having to get around. But yeah, I like the feel of the bus.
The last podcast I mentioned how the bus is the workhorse of the transit system, and half of our rides in Connecticut are actually on the bus system. So there's a lot of attention given to our trains, but our buses are actually providing as many trips as the railroad. Let's talk a little bit about first where we are today. We're all trying to keep each other safe and do our part. So I'd like to hear a little bit of your experience over these last 6 months. How do you feel riding public transportation? Do you feel safe?
Yeah, I will be honest. Throughout the entire pandemic, I've stopped riding the bus. There were a lot of questions. I was unsure. And I have the luxury of owning a bike and being able to use that other option. Over the last month, I started taking the train again. So for short trips, and I've been really, really impressed by how, safe and easy it feels. Everyone wears masks, everyone's distanced. And so I've been recommending it to my friends. Again, I've been saying that the train is a good option and that it feels really good. And I've been thinking this last week, actually, that I should take the bus again. I think I'm ready for it. And I know that the bus system, as you're mentioning, there's this huge equity issue with bus versus trains, is that people who take the bus, often that's their only option.
Nefari, what's your experience been since March when COVID began?
Over the last 3 months or so, I've slowly started taking the bus again. Not as much as the train because I don't really have anywhere to go that requires a train.
So let me just touch on a recent survey that we did. The results aren't fully compiled yet, but we have a couple of lessons that we've learned. So in July, we put a survey out to our riders, both current riders and former riders, and asked people to respond. And 4,500 people took the survey. And what we heard is that, in fact, yes, many riders stayed away initially because there was a concern. And so we knew that might be a risk. That may be one of the reasons why people aren't riding. And we've acted on that. We've done quite a bit to make sure we're following the best practices and the protocols that are recommended. But behind the scenes, we're also doing things like sanitizing the buses with a cleaning agent that kills the virus. We're doing that every day. We're doing that on the trains. We're equipping our frontline crews with the gear that they need. We've suspended, you might have noticed, we've suspended onboard fare collection. So if you get on a bus, you don't have to go up to the fare box right now. And many of our buses now have barriers. So you'll see drivers now in many vehicles pull up and there's a sliding glass barrier that they can pull forward. And we've shifted to rear door boarding to keep the public away from the bus operator. And finally, we've not reduced service. One of the things you might have noticed is we always ran weekday schedules. Many systems around the country elected to reduce service, and we felt that providing full service was the right thing to do because it gave plenty of room, as much room as possible, to spread out. So it's not perfect, but we think what we need to start doing and what we're hearing is that if we want to bring the riders back, we have to reassure everyone. And so that's something we're going to be working on. Talk to me about, your hopes for what we can be doing better to improve your experience.
My biggest suggestion for improvement is strengthening connection in between the big cities. Not just like between Hartford and New Haven, but like every single city, like between New London, Old Saybrook, from like Stamford to Norwalk, things like that. And then also, it's more of a personal thing, but like connections. For example, I've taken trains from New Haven to Hartford, and the train had gotten there just after like the evening pulse of departures when all the buses leave at the same time, and then you would have to wait in Hartford for an hour.
If frequency, we call in our business headways, the schedule.
Yeah.
Yep, that's something that comes up all the time. Once an hour is just not all that convenient, and I would agree with that. I think there's always this tension in public transportation about spreading the resources geographically versus focusing on them in certain corridors and running really high frequency service. That's an age-old debate in our industry, and hopefully in the future we'll have more resources to enhance frequency without sacrificing coverage. Kai, could you talk a little bit about your hopes and aspirations for transit?
Yeah, I hope more frequency, more trains, more buses, just more ridership. I think will help allow that. I think my dream would be more express routes for doing kind of faster trips and having more hubs, especially in New Haven. There's downtown, but I can imagine a lot more point to point so that you can travel, like Nefari was saying, to other cities and get around really easily without having to wait for a long time.
Have either of you tried our CT Fast Track service?
Yes. I started riding like when it first opened when I would like take the bus to high school in Hartford.
What's your thought on that service?
Personally, I love it. It changed a lot of things for me because it connected areas that weren't it connected some areas that weren't previously connected, but it also just made getting to certain areas a lot easier. Because before you would have to go to Hartford downtown to get a bus to say from Wethersfield to Bishop's Corner, but instead you can take a feeder route from Charter Oak Marketplace in Hartford to Bishop's Corner via the 153, that feeder route. But yeah, I think it's great.
Nefari, you talk like one of our service planners, and I'm wondering, do you see yourself staying with public transportation, or do you have any aspirations to own a car? Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
In the future, I'll definitely be using public transportation as often as I do now, and probably even more often than that. I'd like to live in a place like in New Haven, for example, like where you can get a bus at almost all hours of the day, or along the Fast Track corridor with the transit-oriented development that's occurred there, where you can get a bus, 20 hours a day, almost every day of the week.
Yeah, I hope to never own a car. I've been really lucky to live in cities with the public transit infrastructure that allows me to get where I need to go, and has the biking infrastructure as well. I think those paired together make for a great city in many ways. And yeah, I love taking the bus. I like taking the train, and I hope that I always get to live in a place where I have that awesome experience and opportunity to like see my neighbors and see my city, and not just zone out as I go from point A to point B.
Public transportation is still a fantastic way to get out and see your community and interact with people. There's so many great reasons that we need public transportation. We touched on some of the reasons. It's certainly there when people need to get to their job. It's there for grocery shopping. It's there for recreation. But I also think that it makes us stronger as a state. So I guess I'm also curious what you think about additional investment in public transportation relative to other priorities in the state. So if you were the governor, how about this? You're the governor and you have to make a decision. Where do you put the finite resources of the state to work? Where does public transportation rank in your mind relative to other priorities in the state?
I would say it's at the top for sure. I guess I would aim most of the resources at the rail infrastructure, and then probably the bike infrastructure, because I hear about that being an issue too. Not really in New Haven because of like what Kai said, it's pretty good here, but in Hartford, there's not a lot of bike. Well, there are some bike trails, but there's not enough between the trails and existing infrastructure.
Yeah, always more bike infrastructure. I also would place transportation at the top or really close to the top. It's kind of the intersection of all of these issues, right? You need to get to school, you need to get to work. You don't want to contribute to climate change. It's a public health issue if everyone's driving cars and polluting different neighborhoods. And it's also just, I think, a sense of community, being able to get out into your neighborhood and share space with people. It's a little hard now, but hopefully we'll be able to, get that sense of community and neighborliness back.
Certainly, I share that view, but that's not surprising. I agree with you. I think if we have a robust public transportation system, it helps everyone at so many levels, including those that don't use public transportation, because the ability for the transit riders to get around is hugely beneficial to our economy. It's not just that you're providing a trip to an individual who doesn't have a car, but that person is employed. They're providing a role and a service to their community. They may be interacting with friends and family, getting medical care. I mean, all those things are critically important. I wholeheartedly agree with you. So Kai, you talked about quite a bit about the social aspect, the interactions. Can you describe a little bit about how that experience has affected your view of public transportation?
Yeah. When I lived in Portland, I used the bus and my bike to commute. But since moving here, I've used it for a lot of social events and planned really cool things that wouldn't be possible without the train and the bike share system. I organized a group of people to go to Small State Great Beer in Hartford. We all took the train together. Some people brought their bikes on the train. And then once we got to the train station, the people who didn't bring their bikes got on bike share bikes. We went on a little bike tour of the city, and then we went to Small State Great Beer. And it's hugely different to go and to an event that way, rather than we all drive separately to the brewery festival. And it was just, enjoying the journey, which I think is the greatest thing about public transportation, is that you get to enjoy the journey.
Kai, thank you. And Nefari, thank you. Thank you for spending time with us. I love talking with you directly because you are using that service every day. and your opinion means a lot. Your perspective matters. Appreciate you taking the time. I'm sure both of you have very busy schedules. So thank you. Thank you for carving out some time for us. Thank you. Have a great day. Thanks for listening to this episode of Along the Lines. This is your host, Rich Andreski. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please remember to subscribe and share.